Today, we're diving into a battle you might not know, but one that was absolutely pivotal in the Vietnam War. It's the story of a 66-day siege, the story of An Lộc, a small town that stood against a massive invasion and pretty much saved Saigon. Yeah, for 66 brutal days, this one little provincial capital basically became the epicenter of the entire war. So let's explore how this desperate, against all odds defense managed to completely throw a wrench in the works of North Vietnam's massive 1972 Easter offensive. So why was this one town so critical? Well, to get that, we've got to look at a map, specifically the highway to Saigon. You see, An Lộc was the last major obstacle, the final roadblock in North Vietnam's incredibly ambitious plan to end the whole war with one huge invasion. Now, I want you to forget everything you might picture about guerrilla warfare in Vietnam. The Easter Offensive wasn't that. This was a full-on, conventional assault. We're talking the People's Army of Vietnam, the PAVN, rolling south with tanks, heavy artillery, and just tens of thousands of soldiers. Their goal? It was simple. Win the war. Right here, right now. And guess what was sitting smack dab in the middle of their path? An Lộc. You gotta think of it like the final doorstop on the highway to the capital. The stakes could not have been higher, because if An Locc fell, that 90-mile road to Saigon, it would be wide open. So the North Vietnamese forces, they moved with just lightning speed to cut the city off. The trap was set, and it was about to be sprung. And what followed would become one of the most brutal, grueling sieges of the entire war. And the speed here is just breathtaking. Look at this. On April 7th, Luc Ninh, just north of the city, gets captured. That same day, they cut the main highway to the south. The very next day, April 8th, the nearby base camp is overrun. Boom. In just 2 days, the trap snaps shut. An Locc, along with all its soldiers and thousands of civilians, was completely, utterly surrounded. And then you look at the odds. They were just staggering. You have over 31,000 attacking troops facing off against just 7,500 defenders from the South Vietnamese Army, the ARVN. That's more than 4 to 1. I mean, just on paper, this looks absolutely hopeless, right? There's no way they should have been able to hold. So, the first massive assault comes on April 13th, and it's spearheaded by Soviet-made tanks. Can you imagine the shock of seeing those roll into your city? But you know what? The defenders adapted, and they adapted fast. The PAVN commanders made this classic critical mistake. They sent their tanks rumbling in without any infantry support. This left them totally exposed, and pretty soon the streets of An Locc became a graveyard for all that armor. Okay, so they stopped the first tank assault. But that didn't stop the onslaught. Not even close. For weeks, An Locc was just pulverized by relentless shelling. The city was being ground into dust. The defenders were holding on by a thread, but they were right on the verge of collapse. And it's right here, at this breaking point, that the battle enters its most dramatic and most decisive phase. May 11th. This is the day the PAVN decided to go all in. They launched a massive final push, everything they had, infantry and armor, convinced that this time they could finally overwhelm the city's crumbling defenses for good. So what happened? Well, in response, the U.S. Air Force did something unprecedented. They took 170 B-52s, these are massive strategic bombers, mind you, and diverted them to fly tactical, close air support missions for the desperate guys on the ground. The sheer intensity of this air response is hard to even wrap your head around. A B-52 mission every 55 minutes, for 30 hours straight. Just think about that. They created what became known as a steel umbrella of bombs all around the city. The effect was devastating. Entire PAVN regiments were just vaporized before they even got close to the defensive lines. That air power shattered the final assault. The siege was broken. But, this was what you'd call a Pyrrhic victory. That's a victory that comes at such a devastating cost, it almost feels like a defeat. And what happened at An Locc, it revealed some really hard truths for both sides of the war. Just look at the butcher's bell here. The human cost was absolutely staggering. Over those 66 days, the North Vietnamese had an estimated 25,000 casualties. The South Vietnamese lost around 13,000 themselves. This one small town became the site of one of the absolute bloodiest battles of the entire offensive. So what's the big takeaway here? Well, even though An Lộc was a tactical victory for the South, it really put a spotlight on some serious underlying issues. For the ARVN, it proved just how completely dependent they were on U.S. air power to survive. For the PAVN, it exposed major flaws in their logistics. They just couldn't sustain an offensive like this so far from home. And for military history, this battle totally redefined the role of strategic bombers. There's no doubt about it, the defense of An Loc'k was an incredible display of heroism and sheer resilience. But it was also a victory made possible by an absolutely overwhelming aerial advantage. It was a stunning win that saved Saigon in 1972. But that leaves us with a really big, lingering question, doesn't it? What did this victory truly foreshadow for a war that, just a few years later, would have to be fought without any of that American air power at all?